So let's talk about taking a soil sample for class. Ideally, you want to find some soil, regular dirt, just around where you live. It should be where you either plan to put some plants in the ground or where there's already some plants in the ground. And there's some better options than others. So let's take a look at where we can take our soil sample. Okay, so say you're at an established landscape like this one here. We have soil that's underneath shrub beds. Pretty easy to see, pretty easy to gain access to. But if you look closely, you may see that this soil has been amended at some point, meaning when they put the plants in the ground, they added stuff to it. So we don't really want that kind of soil. We want something that hasn't been touched before or hasn't been amended. This has fertilizer put into it every now and then. Another option would be grass, a lawn, turf grass. It is possible to dig down and to see what the soil is below the grass. But similarly, we don't want soil that's been amended or has been worked very much. So I'm going to say no to the grass and no to the shrubs. Now if we look over here, here's some soil that's kind of exposed and doesn't have anything planted in it, and probably hasn't had anything planted in it for a long time. So this would be an okay place to sample. Although this is kind of a slope, and I don't know exactly the effect a slope would have. Maybe things will kind of go downhill. And if you're planning to plant on this slope, this would be a perfect place. But I personally want to find something a little bit more regular, a little bit more normal. And so we're going to go over here and take a look at our options. Now in this landscape, we're right here next to kind of a miniature forest. We have a grove of these Canary Island pine trees, as well as the toyon in the understory. So if you look inside where all the pine trees are, you can see lots of pine needles down there. I'm also going to avoid that. If it's underneath the tree, that may have had some impact on the soil over time. So I'm going to take a look right here and find an area that has nothing growing on it and is not underneath any other trees or shrubs. And I know that this has not been amended or that people haven't been planting here. If we look down, we can see it looks like pretty much wild soil, maybe a little bit compacted because this is kind of a walkway or a path, but this is going to be just fine for us to test. So we're going to call this our sample area and pretend we want to plant something here. We need to know what the soil is like. And now inside here, I'm going to take several samples. Now, if you are a soil scientist, you probably have a tool like this. This is called a soil probe. And so what it is, it's a little bit sharp on this side and it's hollow like a tube. And then you stick this down into the soil and you can see a core sample. You can see what it looks like at different depths of soil. So this would be a perfect tool to use for this job, but most of us do not have a soil probe. And so I'll show you a few other things you can use. If you don't have a soil probe, you can use the next best thing, and I think it's actually even better because it's smaller. This is the apple coring device. So this is a kitchen gadget. You can get it from a dollar store, and this works perfectly as a soil probe. You get your little core sample, but it's only 4 or 6 inches. If you have a trowel, a garden trowel, this one's called a soil knife. so it's really heavy duty and you can dig in the soil with it. This is what I'm going to use today, but you can use any kind of garden trowel, or a shovel would do the job. If you don't have any of that, you can find even like a stick or a rock. Sounds kind of silly, but anything would work. And so here's a brush. I use this to keep my tools clean, but if I had nothing else, I could take this and I could kind of dig down into the soil, and a stick, a sturdy wooden stick, works just fine. For our purposes, we don't have to get too fancy here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do when we dig our hole is we need to get all of this organic matter, all these sticks and twigs. We need to get that out of here. We need to get that away. So you just wipe the soil clean. We want to be able to get down to what I call regular dirt. This is just the plain soil. Nobody's been worrying about this for years. And this is where we're going to take our sample. So I'm going to go ahead and take my soil knife or my garden trowel, and I have no idea how easy this will be, how hard this is going to be, but I just am going to take a little hole. The goal is to go about 6 inches deep, so it doesn't have to be too big or too deep. In the end, we want about 2 cups of soil, or 1 pint of soil. So I'm loosening this up, and then we're going to remove all of this soil. Down to about 6 inches deep. If you see any roots or rocks or any twigs down in there, we want to avoid that if possible. So here is the hole that I dug. It's about 6 inches deep, maybe a little more, a little less. But notice how I kept this wall nice and clean. So this is how I get a good sample. I want to now try and come in and take a little bit from the entire length of the wall. Let me try one more time. In fact, I'll sweep the top away, clean this up. So let's come in here. Okay, so now I have a sample that's from the top to about 3 inches down, and I'm going to take away all the dark organic matter on top. I don't want that. And I'm going to inspect to see if there's any roots. There's actually some plastic in here. Take that away. And I'll kind of scrape away the sides. You could use a knife for this. But here's a piece that's going to go into my soil. I'm going to do this a few more times. This is the kind of stuff we want. And even still, we're going to pull out more of these roots as we find them. So regular dirt, the minerals, the sand, silt, and clay, that's what we're looking for. We don't want the good stuff. We don't want the organic matter. Really, we don't care. This is the kind of stuff we want. So let me take some more samples, and then I'll show you what's the next step. Now you're going to need some type of container to hold your soil, and it could be almost anything. The goal is to have about 2 cups of soil, or 2 big handfuls. A little bit more won't be a problem. You could use a plastic bag, you could use a paper bag, you can go in the recycle bin and find some old food container, anything that's going to hold your soil. Ideally, it's clean and dry. And if you have the ability to put a lid on top or to keep the air out, that's going to be important, because we're going to do all different kinds of tests to this soil, and some of these tests are better when the soil is nice and dry. So you want to be able to keep it dry. I happen to have a really nice metal container here. and it's actually meant to put like your leftover food and stuff, but I don't use it for that, and so I'm going to use this as my soil container. But you don't need anything fancy, you don't need anything really at all. It can be an old coffee can, or it can be a Ziploc plastic bag. Whatever you have is going to work for you. And there we go. Here is the soil sample. You can see it's still kind of in these little clumps. We're going to mix that all up. But I collected more than 2 cups just because I want, if I lose some or if it spills, I want to have enough, and there's plenty of soil here. So maybe this was about 3 cups of material. And so if you have a smartphone, one good thing you can do is snap a photo. I just snapped the photo right in the video here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Zigzag pattern, just in case one of these was compacted or had some little contaminant. I want this to be a good sample. And now, because I'm in a public place and I don't want people to think I'm just disrespectful leaving a mess, I'm just gonna come and fill up the hole. So we use our hands to break this up, and it's pretty easy. We're looking for roots, anything that kind of shouldn't be there. I'm gonna pull these out. You can take some kind of a stone or a piece of wood and see if you can break this up a little bit. Anything you have works. Now, if you're really lucky, you might have access to a mortar and pestle. This is a ceramic mortar and pestle. You use it to grind up your soil and to remove any rocks or debris. You may have this in your kitchen. You may use this for making salsa or other things. If you have it, go ahead and use something like that. Otherwise, your hands is just fine. Okay, so now we take a look at our soil sample and see how nice and clean that is. Then maybe there's a little bit of roots. Maybe there's some pieces that are not yet broken up. But for the most part, that's nice and clean, very uniform. That's what we're looking for. And as we work with our soil, we'll take these roots out over time. See, there's the pile of rocks and the pile of roots, and there's our nice little soil sample. So because this is going to be a scientific process, we need to remember to collect data. And the first piece of data you are going to collect is the location and the date. So here on my container, my soil is going to stay right here. I'm going to put a label on the container. Doesn't matter where you put it. If it's a disposable container, you can write onto the container. But I'm just going to put the location. So I'll say path under trees. And very important, you need to put the date. So I'm going to put today's date when the soil sample was collected. Go ahead and put your name. And then put the class, LNT 134. So now you've got a nice little soil sample, and you've collected this bit of information and you've put it onto the container so it cannot go anywhere. And then take a picture of that. I'll take a picture right here. And you're going to upload that to Canvas.